Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next segment of Moments with Mumilak. We've got to talk to some really exciting guests previously, and we still have lots of amazing people coming up. The purpose of these conversations is to share Indigenous perspectives, experiences, and thoughts. These perspectives are not my own. I am looking to create awareness and support discussion amongst Indigenous peoples ourselves and among Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples outside of these Zoom segments. This week, we'll be talking to a number of artists originally from the territory and get to hear about some of their experiences and challenge and get to hear directly from them. So the first person I'm talking to during this segment is Aasiva. And Aasiva, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, just to start?
Hey, Aasiva Nakashuk nga Pangnirtung sayo yung man ekalun ni mi tawlok Inuk tunga akagoni tisamanik tana kukita pautakala atoktugu ingyew silok tapunga. My name is Aasiva Nakashuk. I am originally from Pangnirtung, but now I'm living in Iqaluit. I am a singer-songwriter and have been an artist for about 4 years now with my trusty little ukulele here. And thank you so much for having me today, Momilak.
Really appreciate having you, and glad it worked out after some of the fun rain experiences trying to connect beforehand. When I talk
No
about
kidding.
connectivity on the federal level, I don't think people really have a grasp of what we're talking about sometimes. So I'm super, super happy that you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about your music, and maybe if we start with how you've really, I guess, where your interest really started to spark, and it was something that you saw more of a career as opposed to a hobby?
Hey, so I guess my professional career started about 2 years ago when my first album was released. And a lot of those songs talk about what I was going through at the time. So I would talk a lot about homesickness and feeling alone, and also talking about hope and being happy. Music has always been a huge coping mechanism for me. And it actually started when I was about 11 years old, when I started with the fiddle. And I realized that it was a great way to express what I'm feeling and express what I'm thinking without needing to say any words. So that's kind of where my passion for music started. And throughout the years, it has kind of evolved, and I've picked up so many instruments. But with my ukulele, it just feels like we clicked. Songwriting became so easy. It was always a goal of mine to create something of my own, whether that be a tune on the fiddle or a cool guitar riff or anything like that. So a few years ago, I picked up the ukulele and I started songwriting, and it was very organic. And yeah, music has always been a huge coping mechanism and a form of self-expression.
Music is helpful in so many ways. A healthy emotional outlet, I think, is something that is very powerful in itself. And we know in the territory that mental health services are so lacking, and music is definitely a way to help to cope with things that are going on.
Yeah.
With that being said, how would you yourself describe your music?
I guess I don't really know how to describe it. I guess I would say others have described it as indie folk or folk music. But for me, it's like Inuktitut music, because most of my songs are all in Inuktitut. And there's a lot of ukulele and throat singing. And with my next album coming up, it's kind of more, I would say, contemporary Inuktitut music. So I'm really excited for that to be released into the world.
Inuktitut is so strong for Inuit in a lot of ways. Of course, there is still lots of work to be done in terms of language revitalization. Do you find that there's any, I don't know if difference is the right word, but how would you explain, I guess, that comparison of writing in Inuktitut compared to English, or is it more about what you're writing about as opposed to the language you're writing it in?
I think Inuktitut just came very naturally with songwriting because Inuktitut in and of itself is already a musical language. So incorporating an instrument was very organic. But also Inuktitut is my first language. It's a language that I grew up in because it's very strong in Pangnirtung, and most of the children I grew up with spoke Inuktitut. So it came very naturally to me. And also it was very important for me to write my songs in Inuktitut because it shows my pride in my culture and my language. And also I really wanted to help preserve our culture and our language that way by singing our songs in Inuktitut and encouraging young children, teens and adults to keep speaking our beautiful language.
Absolutely. I like the example I use is I grew up on Susan Aglulka. That's what I listened to quite a bit. And when, in the last few years, listening to some of those albums that I haven't heard in a while, the English songs didn't really, I would have to go and look up the lyrics again. And the Inuktitut songs, for the most part, it was like instant. A melody, I'd hear a melody, and instant, I'd remember what it is. And I think the term is the body memory or something like that. But I think that
Yes.
in terms of language, it's ingrained into who we are. It's ingrained in our ancestors. It's ingrained in how even Inuit have moved through the world. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. I know that your first album was released just over 2 years ago now, I believe. Can you talk about some of the, since then, can you talk about some of the experiences that you've had that really stood out to you, maybe some of the places you've went or people you may have met along the way since then?
Okay. Maybe I'll just talk a little bit about how scared I was to release my album. It felt like I was very vulnerable with my music, and it was like I was showing my soul to the world. So it was very scary in the beginning, but something that I wasn't really expecting was the amount of support that I got from our territory and from other Inuit all over the world. And my music has brought me to so many places. Last year, I was able to go to Greenland. I went to Taiwan for a music festival, and I've also traveled across our country and also to other Inuit regions. I was able to go to Nunavik and do a few ukulele workshops and concerts. And my absolute favorite was traveling within our territory and getting to meet all our fellow Inuit in our territory. And I don't know, music really connects us.
Absolutely, it does. And has there been anything along the way, any barriers or challenges that maybe you weren't necessarily expecting? Or do you want to talk to some of the things that artists, I know that I would never call myself an artist, I don't think, but I have lived with them. I have been very good friends with them, and I know how much dedication, hard work and passion that needs to go into it in order to really to follow your dreams, to be able to make a living even, and that there are so many challenges along the way. Is there anything that really sticks out to you that maybe you weren't expecting to have to come across and deal with?
I guess the first thing would have been finding a producer, like finding a producer that would be willing to work with me to record my songs and to produce them along the way. And another thing was finding space to do that. There are no set studios here in Nunavut, although there are some home studios, which is how I was able to record my album. And the most thing that I was scared about was funding. It was very intimidating to try and apply for funding to record my album. First of all, because sometimes the language used in proposals or applications could be quite difficult, and not at the time I didn't have the background of strong writing, so I was always very hesitant with that as well. And once I got the funding, the next barrier was financial literacy in terms of reporting. That was always another thing that was really scary. But thankfully, I was able to receive support to write the proposal during the project and after the project with reporting. So I'm really thankful I was able to receive support, because I don't think I would be able to do that if I didn't, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that so many people are just completely unaware of, that the immense amount of talent that is in Inuit, whether it's arts, it's music, it's performance, the beauty of that industry is that people really don't realize how much work it takes. It's not that easy in smaller communities, especially, to just take piano lessons or guitar lessons, or so many of our artists are self-taught and have that extra amount of drive and determination, having to go find funding, having to do reporting, it's a lot of work. And I don't think people realize in the territory how extremely limited those resources, those tools, and those necessary pieces of equipment are. So with that being said, what are your hopes for the future of music for Inuit, for young people in the territory, for anyone really?
Man, I have so many dreams. But I think one of them would be to have a dedicated space in every community so that people, Inuit, will have the opportunity to go and try instruments, to learn how to play instruments, to jam out with other Inuit, and also having the resources to do so. So having instruments available, or a computer with internet access so you can watch YouTube videos if there's no teacher available. And really just incorporating music into the schools. Music is such a great way of self-expression, like I mentioned earlier. So I think incorporating into the schools and allowing everyone to have the opportunity to try, because I felt I was able to find myself through music. I can't imagine how many other Inuit would be able to do that as well if they were given the resources to do so. And another thing would be to take down the barriers for funding so that it'll be easier for Inuit to apply for funding to live their dream.
You
I'll
can't
stop there
see
for
it,
now.
but at one point I got goosebumps all over my neck. It's true. It's like, if you give a young group of people some instruments, the amount of things that they come up with and invent and create is so wonderfully mind-blowing in a very good way. With the looking at the future of music, I guess, within the territory for Inuit, what about yourself? Where would you like to see yourself in the future in your music career?
Well, eventually I would like to become a music therapist. I've been looking into going to university for that, but it's a little bit daunting, so I'm trying not to think too hard about it. But eventually I really would like to be a music therapist, because I think it could have a potential impact on our community, because we're just so creative and musical. And I think using this type of therapy would be nice to try out. And right now, I'm living my dream by teaching Inuit youth how to play the ukulele, and also just stressing the importance of self-expression and coping mechanisms. And I just want to see myself doing that forever. It's something that I love and I'll never get tired of. And I just want to give the opportunity to everyone to try music. It's so important.
Absolutely. And music is so therapeutic in so many different ways, and such a good tool in so many different ways. Absolutely. Can you give us a little taste of your music before we wrap up?
Sure. This is a song that'll be on my next album. It's called Namu. It means, where am I going next? It's been such a crazy whirlwind of 2 years. I have no idea where I'll be next. So that's where this song means. Urang akin nararamdaman. Ang laruya at adiramahan, di magkamay na mga lakungan. Namong ang nalakungan, namong ang nalakungan. Namo, 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 nalakungan. Di magkamay na mga lakungan. Technical difficulty.
That's great. I know it's always super fun to try and do all this virtual stuff all the time. My goodness.
Woohoo.
I have had my fair share of technical malfunctions for sure.
Well, at least it was at the end of the song, so.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm super, super excited for your future and to keep following along. And we can find you on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, I believe. Okay.
Yep.
So go and look up Aasiva on any and or all three of those platforms. I suggest the three, and follow along with her career and what she does in the future. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for giving me the space and the opportunity to talk about my music and my dreams. And kuya na may larik. And don't forget to follow my Facebook page, Aasiva.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.